Hello and welcome to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Hope everybody had a happy holiday. I'm your host, Gary Morgan. With me, as always, my good friend, Jim Stam. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. We sat and relaxed all day yesterday. We switched it up and made a tavern-style pot roast in the slow cooker.
Nice.
And man, that was good. So yeah, that's all we did. We didn't have any family in town. My parents have COVID, so they could not make it.
Well, that's not good, but
well, yes, but they're okay. They just couldn't travel. And yeah, so what did you do? How was your day, and what did you make? Because you're usually making something.
I mean, I do breakfast every year for the whole family. They all come over. So it's more of a lunch actually, but it's breakfast food. So I put on a whole spread, everything you could think of: sausage gravy, biscuits, bacon, eggs, grits, mush, corned beef hash, potatoes, everything you could think of. I usually have it.
So just a few carbs here and there.
Just a few, yeah. But if you think about it, it's kind of like half your intake for the day. We don't really have a real formal dinner on Christmas in our family. We go to Megan's grandma, huge family, all gets together, and we have like a buffet style thing. You can kind of just have whatever you want, and so if we're not hungry, we don't eat a lot. If we are, we eat. Like, it's good stuff.
Well, and you got to enjoy it watching an awesome Steelers game, so that helped.
Yeah, it was. What a tremendous game it was. I'll be honest. I do appreciate them sucking bad enough that I took a guilt-free 20 or 15-minute nap there, like in the third quarter somewhere, because
the Steelers did too. So
yeah, it felt that way, right? I didn't feel like I missed anything except for the Chiefs scoring, but yeah, not a great sports day there on Christmas. Actually, the other game stunk too. I don't know. I wonder if when the Steelers and Texans have to face each other in the playoffs, they know one of the teams has to win. We'll see what happens, right?
Hey, they're in the playoffs, I guess, is the saving grace. So
some teams in town would take that happily, right?
Oh, my goodness.
So, Andrew McCutchen's back, Jim, and
yeah,
Andrew is going to be the focus of this show for the most part. There's a lot that surrounded this signing, a lot, and I want to talk through all of it. I think it's interesting the way that the fans have reacted, even the people that are just kind of like just blown away that Andrew came back at all a few years ago. Even they're kind of like, okay, and I think,
right.
I count us in that. We were both kind of through the roof that he came back at all. It was just a really cool story, right? And then that he actually performed, even cooler story. But I got to admit, man, this time it's real hard to sell me that that's the pre-Pirates Fest surprise. I don't think that gets the juices flowing the way it did 3 years ago, even though he hit 20 home runs last year, and I absolutely want him back on this baseball team, especially for the $5 million discount he takes out of the kindness of his heart.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think everybody was just sitting around this year just expecting it to happen for the number that it happened for. It's interesting, like, I've seen people talking about, like, just wanting him to retire. That strikes me as a really curious response. Like, out of all the responses that you could have, is you'd rather him just retire.
It's hard to figure, Jim. I mean, like, you try to make sense of where these thoughts are coming from. I've tried to push back on a few people. Like, how could you say that? I even put out a post like, you really want him to retire? Like, honestly?
Mhm.
Like, that's where your head goes?
That's the one that puzzles me.
I don't get that.
More than
Like,
anything.
the guy hit 20 home runs last year. Someone will sign that. Someone in baseball wants that to be on their baseball team. And I don't understand why you would want him to retire, quite honestly. I mean, it's a weird thing. And the only thing that makes any sense to me at all is they really see this $5 million as being used more wisely if lumped in with whatever else they're going to spend. And they
it's like
the fact that he's taken up that $5 million. But again, I got to tell you, if he's on the open market, he hit 20 home runs last year in limited action. You figure someone signs him, he probably gets 6, 7, 8. Carlos Santana just got 12. Come on. I mean, like, this is not a useless player. What are we thinking here, people? Do we resent the team so badly now that we can't even sign back a good player?
Yeah, I think he's seen as an impediment, right? To better things. Yeah, and just real quick to get back to, we have plenty of time to talk about this, but just to get back to asking someone to retire when they can still play. And, he's still got milestones I'm sure that he would love to hit. And another thing is, Andrew McCutchen could go somewhere else and play for somebody that has a chance to maybe win a World Series. So, it's not as if he doesn't have options. I think he prefers this one and he's willing to give the Pirates a discount to do it. But he can still play. Is he a guy that you're going to give 600 plate appearances to anymore? No. But that doesn't mean he can't be a very productive piece. I mean, I guess if you're wanting them to go out and solely address the DH position, okay, I get it. You're not thrilled. But to me, that's not one of the areas where the Pirates have that they should be focusing on just as much. Like, right. I think they should be looking elsewhere. I still think Cutch can still give you something at the DH spot.
I don't even care if he's formally any spot. For $5 million, Andrew McCutchen is a bat I want on this team. I don't care if he DHs 60 times this year and the rest of his at-bats are from pinch hits. If that's what $5 million gets you, at least Pirate Hall of Famer back on your team that's going to hit more home runs and take up a roster spot that would go to somebody like Alika Williams or something like that. I'm sorry. I don't care.
You actually make a really good point in the sense that if he were nothing but a bench bat to give you professional at bats, whenever you need
somebody to get on base for you in the 8th inning, down 1. Andrew McCutchen's that guy that we can call off the bench to get that pinch hit or that real tough at bat. Look at a lot of pitches, get on base any way he can. You need him to play DH for a couple days because your main guy goes down or you're facing a tough lefty. There's your guy. Is that how they'll use him? No. That's the fear that fans have. That's the fear. Fans don't think that they have the self-control to put Andrew McCutchen in more of a bench role because they don't. They will let him hit a lot, right? And they probably will throw him at leadoff or the 4-hole. So I guess if you think like this one signing means we're not trying to get better, okay, I guess. I just can't work myself into a lather over it. I kind of think people are overdoing it a little bit.
Well,
and I think it's fear of other things, not Andrew himself.
Yeah, let's do our break. There's some interesting comments, and we'll come back and we can keep going because there's a lot to dive into here.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Should also touch on something else. Last week, I know YouTube pulled down our video. I'm sorry. It's always a risk when we do the holiday shows. We always try to tell you it's a possibility. I understand everybody couldn't make it live. Sorry. If you're old, most of the clips came through in audio pretty well. I think you understood what they were. But I do apologize. It's one that, hey, we do it with that knowledge, man.
And I love that YouTube, what they don't regulate, but they'll regulate that. Because God forbid you enjoy a 15-second Christmas clip.
Yeah. Well, in this case, I think it was NBC Universal, and I think it was the Saturday Night Live stuff. So sorry, but hey, it happens. It happens. I want to read this one quote here from Sixburg because it's actually a real good synopsis of how some people feel. Cutch hit 230 last year. Love the guy. Love his career. And I'm fine having him back mostly because of who he is. But let's be real. Is he taking us to the next level? It's not a great signing. Yeah, I can hear all that. I guess I'm not looking for Andrew McCutchen to take us to the next level. I'm just looking to keep the production he gave us on this team. That's all. I just want him to bring that production back. This team is not one that I feel, Jim, is in a position to throw away 20 home runs. They're not. You can say they use him too much, they rely on him too much, use him incorrectly, whatever it is. He's going to hit. He's got a lot of experience. He knows how to handle himself as a DH at this point. That's a skill in and of itself, to learn how to not play the field anymore. He's even talked to that before. That's not something that I just want to throw at a rookie that I don't have a spot for. Not yet.
Yeah, I think maybe if you want to focus more on how he might be used or that they'll use him too much, maybe that's more of an argument than having him back at all. He did hit 20, like you said, he did hit 20 home runs. He still has a good on-base percentage. Here's the shame of it. $5 million just sounds like a lot to the Pirates fans, doesn't it? Like we've gotten such a warped value of the dollar here. There really shouldn't be a team that wouldn't want an Andrew McCutchen on their roster for that kind of money. Now, right. You could probably make the argument, well, geez, if they're not going to spend anywhere else, then boy, I'd love to have that $5 million. But I do got to tell you, if you're in a game, first of all, he's a veteran as far as a hitter goes. If you were in a game and needed a big hit, and God forbid, he's the only guy you have to put in that situation, that sounds like a pretty good person to have in that situation. There's something to be said for being able to take a veteran professional at bat when it's really needed. Now you can make the argument, well, are they going to need any professional at bats? They're not going to be good enough to be there. I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, like I hear, I'm going to give Sixburg another shot here because they're rebutting what we're saying, so I'm going to rebut him. He's another year older too, probably going to show decline this year. Again, I love Cutch, but man, I mean, you got to knock the qualifiers out at this point of the conversation. We get it. You like the guy, okay? Back out of it.
Everybody does.
Yeah, we understand it. I don't. He says it's to accept mediocrity, and $5 million is a lot for this organization. $5 million is a lot for this organization, and that's why when a $10 million player says they'll play for you for $5 million, you go and get it. I mean, $5 million on the open market is a decent reliever. And I mean decent reliever, not a top end reliever. I mean a decent reliever. A Bruce Sutter is a $5 million player. Andrew McCutchen is not a $5 million player. All I'm trying to say is that $5 million would not be of equal value on the market as it is signing Andrew McCutchen. We can all agree that Bob Nutting needs to spend more money. I don't think we need to take that out on Andrew McCutchen. That's all I'm saying. If they signed him and they were a normal team for $5 million, they would be seen as brilliant. That's the truth. 20 home runs is a lot more expensive than $5 million in this league.
Yeah, to me, he's definitely gotten. Bednar and McCutchen have landed in the same spot, oddly enough, which is, if there's any uncertainty around it at all, not to pay the money. And I actually argued with Bednar, maybe they shouldn't.
Me too.
Yeah. So I don't think it's across the board. And Sixburg said something else interesting there about that he's due to regress this year or something to that.
He said he'll probably show decline.
Probably
I think that's an assumption. Once you get to the 34 year, I think you usually start declining. I think that's pretty typical.
Yeah, there's something interesting though about Cutch. I knew we were obviously going to talk about him, so I went and I looked at something. And last year he did something very uncharacteristic that suggests to me that maybe he won't regress, Gary. At least that you might see the same from him. And in his career, Andrew McCutchen against left-handed pitching, in his career, is a 911 OPS and a 522 slugging percentage. Do you know what Andrew McCutchen weirdly didn't do last year? He didn't hit left-handed pitching well. It was odd, but he had a 694 OPS last year against lefties, and hit 200 with a 375 slugging percentage. He just didn't hit lefties, and he characteristically has his whole career.
Yeah.
So he had an off year versus lefties. Am I suggesting that he's going to go crazy and put up better numbers than he did last year? No, but I still think you can make the argument that he could put up the same exact kind of year that he did last year.
It could suggest though. I mean, I think it's undeniable that he was trying for more power last year. I think he is experiencing that part of his career where you kind of realize that you don't have all the same skills that you used to have, and you've got to start changing some things to be effective. So, I mean, you could tell he was going for power more last year. There were some swings he was taking that were uncharacteristic of Andrew McCutchen. And I think a lot of that is because I think he changed a lot of what Andrew McCutchen does. Still got the same swing, but you can tell he's hunting things. He's hunting up pitches. He's taking hacks at things he would have let go in the past, trying to make the taters happen, right? And that's good. So I expect him to continue on that track. If anything, I think he might add a little more power and lose a little more on base as he goes. That said, he kind of does whatever the Pirates want. When they wanted him to be an on-base guy and lead off, that's what he focused on. It's hard to tell what he is. He almost can change. He's a little bit of a chameleon at the plate right now.
He can certainly emphasize things in his game more than younger hitters can, just because of his experience. Again, I don't think people are necessarily making hugely erroneous type statements about Cutch. I just feel like, man, if you can't find a place on your roster for Andrew McCutchen and what he can still do for $5 million, and also the veteran stuff that I think is important on a team like that. Yeah. I just think it's an overreaction. That's all.
Yeah. Let's talk about another overreaction, because there's a lot that surrounds the Andrew McCutchen story, like I said, but I kind of wanted to. I'm going to do something weird on this show. I'm going to defend Cody Duncan because, I think he originally said like that Cutch was coming back. I think it was Thursday or something. Now, I kind of got what he meant here. Like it's happening, right? They're signing him. We all have been saying that since like last September. We all knew, and we all knew the terms. We all been saying the terms. I think I've even written a few times with like the estimated number in there in my add up of the payroll right now. So we all knew it was happening. Cody Duncan comes out and he says, hey, Cutch is signing. He got, typical reactions, people saying yes, 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 yes. And then Alex Stumpf came out and basically said, nope, your sources are crap. And Cody, of course, puts sources in his thing because, of course, he's Cody. But okay, so then basically Alex says, no, it didn't happen yet. And Twitter and Facebook went in like 100 different directions from there. They went from hating Cody Duncan for being an idiot to hating the journalist for disputing something that they know is going to happen or is happening, or not supporting a blogger. They went to, they're so cheap that they're not going to be willing to re-sign Andrew McCutchen because he wants more money for last year. I saw it just fracture into a million pieces. So I thought, let's just lay the track here a little bit. I believe Cody Duncan. I think he had a source, likely a family member or a close friend, who told him that the Pirates sent over a contract and Andrew was going to sign it. Something along those lines. I'm guessing. I haven't talked to the kid, but I don't believe he just made it up. Somebody told him. The beat writers like Alex that come out, they rightfully are reporting that right now he is not signed. That's all. That should have been it. And had he not been like nope and like had fun with Cody, as many of us have been guilty of doing.
Not Gary, not me. I don't know what you're talking about, but go ahead.
It could have just come out as, nah, actually he's not done it yet. They are still talking and everything. It's not really official yet. And it would have been squashed and over with. And then a couple days later, when they came out with the official story that, hey, he is re-signed, there was a lot of calls for apologizing to Cody for having actually broken it. All I have to say is, if you don't understand this basic difference, it's because you don't want to understand this basic difference. Okay? Cody put out a rumor. Cody is not an accredited journalist. The accredited journalist got mad because a non-accredited journalist, who many of them used to be, broke the story and basically didn't have the right sources to confirm it, meaning the Pirates. That's the one they have to hear from to say, yes, it's happening. Or the agent. Or the player. But they got to hear it. They don't believe anything that bloggers say. Okay? Like, that's all there's to it. And it doesn't mean that Cody doesn't have sources. And it doesn't mean anything that you wanted to believe. It was just a misunderstanding and a couple of people kind of slapping each other in the face a little bit on social media. And it blew up into days of conversation and angst about Andrew McCutchen not wanting to stay here. Couldn't see this team improving. Needs to see the team improve before he signs. Come on now. Did you miss it all, Jim, while you were having fun with your family?
I'm sitting here thinking about, like, as soon as I saw that he officially signed, I knew it was just like flipping a switch on X, because I knew exactly what people would do. They would go back and, the minions, one way or the other, start their little snippy snip fest. And I just sat back and laughed at it all. I think, Gary, too, like, sometimes I think that that's what's interesting about all this, is that there is information out there sometimes. It's just that you probably want to know how the whole process works in general, before you go dipping your toes in that. And I don't think people understand enough how it works. You did a very good job there of like, is it all technicalities? Maybe, but that's how that's how journalism works.
And I would say too, like there's an environment right now, and I personally think well earned, that a lot of the country is distrustful of journalism at this point. But I think you really need to kind of like separate that out, because there are political journalists and they all have their leanings, and I think you understand that. But there are sports journalists too, and some of them have agendas and you can smell them, but most of them don't. Their biggest sin is being really defensive of the journalistic career. Like where they get a bug up their ass because somebody scooped them or something, and then they start floating around who had the story first all over every time some story happens. It's so dumb. It's so dumb. Social media has made us dumb. We now have to like have John Heyman report that Jeff Passan said something before he said it. Who cares? Who cares? When you know something as fact, Mr. Journalist, put it out there and shut your mind off. I don't care about where you heard it. If you heard it from a source that knows, you, Mr. Journalist, put it up there. I don't care who said it first. I don't care if you said it 3 days later. It doesn't matter.
Everybody's so touchy. It's an interesting dynamic out there between journalists, bloggers, journalists and other journalists, bloggers and other bloggers. Man, you know what? I just prefer to rely on the people that I have shown that have shown me time and time again that they are to be trusted. And those are the ones that I'll typically stick with. If there are people that don't do that, then I probably wouldn't advise you to hitch your cart to that. That's all I would say about it.
I'd also say with the journalists, man, you gotta start understanding the difference between them reporting something as factual news or them telling you how they feel about something or something they've heard or whatever. That's a different thing too. A journalist can tell you something they hear. This happens to Mark Madden a lot, actually. He does a lot of things that I hate, but he also does a lot of things ethically. The guy has sources that tell him things and he tells you them. That doesn't mean they're right. That doesn't mean he didn't hear it either. So he, in his mind, is not doing his job if he doesn't tell you what he's heard. That's different than the news. You get what I mean? There is a difference.
There's a gray
there.
area in everything now, I think.
Yeah,
too.
Not everybody's lying to you all the time. They just are hearing things that are incorrect. That's why stories change.
I think that people love to use that word source, and they might not realize what kind of waters they start wading into when they use that term.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Right.
And,
like when I shoot you a text message and I say like, hey, I'm hearing this.
Right.
Do you ever see me put that up there usually?
No.
When do I do that? When I have 2 or 3 people telling me something, then I'll be like, okay, there's a little smoke here at least. And then at best I throw it out and say like, wait for someone real to report it. I'm not real. I'm just a dude that's reading a bunch of stuff. That's all.
Reading something or hearing something, getting a little, birdie comes along your way and says something that you trust. You just have to, I don't know. You just have to be smart and kind of be okay with the space that you're in, right? And
I would say too, like at best, even if you're a blogger and you win this, like say you actually do break something, you really do have something big. I mean, I've had I think the biggest thing I ever had before other people was Brian Reynolds making the All-Star team a few years ago. And I didn't do anything with it because what's the sense in me doing anything with it? I'm going to beat them by 4 minutes, 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and nobody's going to believe me anyway. So at best, I win myself a pissing match with a national outlet. Like, why would I want that? Why would anybody want that? Just stay in your freaking lane, man. If you got things worth saying, people will listen to you.
You know, Gary, it reminds me of the time that I was told that Jordan Addison was going to be transferring to USC from outside of Pitt, and it was nowhere to be found. And you know what I did with that information? I just sat there with it. It just wasn't worth going down that road. Right. So, like, yeah, it was right. But I just feel like you said, you're fighting an uphill battle with that stuff. It eventually came out. I checked in with a couple people that I trust. They didn't know about it yet. It came out. Whatever. I don't need to be a part of it. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, great. I just think we have a lot of people wishing they maybe were more than they were. That's fine too. Just be smart about how you do it. That's all.
Yeah, until they find out what it pays, and then all of a sudden, I'll just keep doing it for free. You know, like,
yeah.
You know, I'll tell you what, man. Let's take another break, and when we come back, what I want to talk about is if Andrew McCutchen being re-signed can upset people. What exactly does not upsetting people look like? Like, what's the low bar for what this team could really do? We don't seem to like their trade ideas. We don't seem to like the trades they execute. We certainly don't like when they sign aging stars. So let's talk about what happiness actually might look like.
At DK Pittsburgh Sports, we take pride in coverage that connects our city's fans to their favorite teams. Now, that connection's stronger than ever. Introducing our all-new state-of-the-art app. Find expert inside reporting and original podcasts. Check live box scores. Track the latest stats. Chat it up with our community of thousands of fans, all in one place. The new app from DK Pittsburgh Sports. Coverage that connects.
All right, welcome back to the Pirates Fan Forum here on DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. Seth Johnson says people need to...
That's what I'm smiling about.
Step back and look at reality. They are crazy. I totally agree, Seth. So what really makes people happy right now if you're a Pirates fan? If it's like something like signing Pete Alonso or Juan Soto, I'm not breaking news by telling you that's not going to happen here. So what is it? Is it a big trade that brings back a big name?
No, because people hated that too. Like a lot of people, you know, like I've put it out there several times that I do think if Jared Jones got you back a really good return, you should look at it. And boy, people don't like that, you know. So I don't know where you go. They do a lot of dumb stuff. Let's be honest there, but still.
Let's start with Jones and Keller. I kind of can't believe it's still being talked about and bannered about the way it is. I think they had a little bit of room on their major league roster to move a pitcher. They did. And some people, Luis Ortiz.
Yeah, but once that happened,
it changes some things. It doesn't mean that they have to be completely closed off to it. Like if Mitch Keller had a down year, and he's got a contract that escalates pretty quickly here. I could make an argument that you should consider trading Mitch Keller, especially if you can get controllable major league talent in return. And by controllable, I'm fine with somebody that's already got a major league signed contract. Like if it's an even swap of money and it's even an equal size player, like I'm talking like a 5-6 hitter type that you could get back that you have for like 3 years, I'd be interested in that. I don't have any names in mind, but I can paint a scenario where I would trade Mitch Keller. But that's it. There is no scenario where they will trade either of those players for prospect load. Either of those players are bringing back major league talent, or they are not even in a conversation here.
Well, and to us, I think maybe that's understood, but I'm not so sure people interpreted it that way.
I'm positive they don't. That's why I'm interpreting it out loud right here.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy to think that they would be out there looking for prospects, but no. There would be prospects that would come as part of a package for something like that, maybe. But you're getting major league talent if you're trading off your major league team at this point.
Yeah, I don't think you're picking up the phone and calling the Pirates and talking about Jared Jones and having it be for quantity over quality at this point. Like, that's not the scenario. Like, the Pirates aren't going to listen for anything other than guys that impact offensively right now. Now.
And not guys that look like they might. Guys that have, specifically. Like, we talked, there was a lot of talk even when we had Ed on from Boston about Jared Jones for Weiler Abreu. Well, that always made me a little queasy because I know that both teams probably see those as straight up values. I think they probably do. They're both guys that had solid rookie campaigns, have a little bit of growth to do to get where they're going. Potential's through the roof, floor is pretty high. That's for both of those players. I think that you could make a case that that's an even swap. If I'm the Pirates, I'm uncomfortable with that. I've got a fairly established starting pitcher, which is way more valuable than a sort of established major league right fielder, even though he won a Gold Glove. You know, like, I think
he had a really good rookie season.
But you could make an argument that a deal like that might be on the table, is the point. That or Kobe Mayo, or, you know, I mean, I think Kirkstad's probably a little low. But you have to have some kind of an understanding that if you got like Luis Robert back plus a prospect for Jared Jones or Mitch Keller, you might think that's not a bad idea. You know, like,
right.
It solves an offensive problem. Maybe you aren't happy with the way Mitch, you know, reacted after his contract. You know, you don't want a guy to have a down year the year they sign their contract. You want them to accelerate into it, right? You want them to catch the tailwind and carry it a little bit with that on their back, like Brian Reynolds did, quite frankly. You want them to take off and do something with it, make you look smart. They've had 2 out of 3 now that haven't, for guys they've extended. I could see them being frustrated with Mitch.
Yeah, Mitch to me is interesting only because I do look at him as like the rock solid veteran of the group, and the innings are so important, which he gives you. He'd be a tough guy for me to move just simply because, like, even if he is your third starter or even your fourth, if he's given you close to 200 innings, I don't have a problem with it. I do think you need a guy like that on that staff. I do.
I do too. And that's where I lean as well, Jim. I'm playing devil's advocate. But on the other side of things, Mitch has had 2 late season swoons back to back in performance.
He has.
The first one you could put on him trying to learn how to stretch himself out into a 200 inning pitcher. The second one, we should note, he was not successful in getting to 200 innings, even when they really, really needed him to, and still had the swoon. There is reason for concern there. Now,
sure,
I love the way he pitches early in the season. I think if you just played that snippet I just put out there come like May or June, I probably look pretty stupid. But check back in with me in September. We'll see how he did. That to me is reason for concern. You may want him to be that 200 inning workhorse. He may not have that 200 inning workhorse in him.
It's the last piece he needs to put together, quite honestly. they don't need Mitch Keller on fumes in August and September, when hopefully they're at least in sniffing a wild card. And I'll be the first to agree with that. I think my concerns about Jones are just there in general with him, and it has nothing to do with his talent. So, but these are the conversations that we've got to have.
Mike put it all right here. This is you and I have been saying this forever. Drop the cutter. Drop the cutter, Mitch. Drop the cutter.
That's the old what's the adage? Jack of all trades, master of nothing.
Well, I think he calls that his I think that's his answer to not taxing himself as much by throwing that sweeper as often as he would. He thinks he can flip that little cutter in there and get away with it. And sometimes he can against the right hitter,
but not nearly consistently enough.
Yeah. You got to land that sweeper instead. I'm sorry if it's more stressful on your arm and you can only go 5. That's where he's going to have to evolve to, man. Like, because he's got to change some things. Point is, Mitch Keller could be available, but you would be looking for major league return. That's a tough find. A lot of teams that would be trying to acquire Mitch Keller, well, they probably don't have like a whole lot of spare middle of the order bats sitting around they're willing to part with, with a couple years of control yet. That's a tough match. That's a hard marriage to find,
Right. Because typically a team that's taking on a Mitch Keller deal is in fact looking to compete right now too.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, they're looking to add him as a major piece to a rotation.
Like, let me give you an example. Let's say the Rangers needed a starter, and they have Adolis Garcia's got 2 more years of team control. You could see them offering Adolis Garcia and maybe a couple prospects for Mitch Keller, and the Pirates might think about that. That's a potential deal that, if you really believe in Bubba Chandler, you still have a room to get better. But that would be an automatic roster downgrade until proven otherwise.
Right.
So it's a hard deal to pull off. It's a hard deal to sell. Would that make fans happy? Do you get what I mean, Jim? We talk about like these big splash moves. If Andrew McCutchen coming back is even below meh to you, what actually does raise the needle that could happen in this market? Is it Randall Grichuk? I mean, what does it for you?
Well, it's funny because when you're on social media and whatnot, there's such a blowback about moving any of the pitching from most people. And I just look at it as like, that's really the currency the Pirates have. That's their currency. You want them to spend in unrealistic ways from nutting because of their situation. I think that the pitching's always been the currency at this point, right? Like that's become where you have something to spend.
It's where we see the currency. I don't believe, and this is maybe where I think the big philosophical difference is between the fan base and this general manager. I don't believe that he has given up on the dream of just having the pitching factory. I don't think he understands the part where you do have to move some of it to recoup, but he is stingy with them, right? That said, I've been looking at a lot of the trades, Jim, around the league. Really, not a lot of top prospects ever get moved. Like, even for like the bigger name trades, you're seeing 5s and 7s in people's organizations. You're not seeing 1, 2s, and 3s. So, in many ways, I think a lot of people start talking about Oh, it's got to be Bubba Chandler and Thomas Harrington and Henry Davis and for like somebody like Robert Jr. Not with that injury history, it doesn't. No. And like, is that a price that would get it done? Absolutely, it would. Do you really want them to pay that? I don't.
Think, right. And I do think prospects, especially the best prospects, have become more valued in baseball than they ever have been. And you're seeing teams play them earlier. You're seeing them have success earlier. They're not having to pay them as much.
Yeah.
The rosters are getting younger. So everybody is adopting that philosophy around the league.
They are.
And they're not waiting to bring them up. So if they think they are ready, they will bring them up and get that out of them right away.
So somebody that you wanted signed for first base or traded for, Nathaniel Lau, got moved from Texas for a really good reliever in Philadelphia. And I mean, a really good reliever. Seriously, look his numbers up. Solid reliever. And a lot of people were understandably like, oh, the Pirates could have done that. I totally agree. They could have. Obviously, once the Horwitz thing was done, though, did you think there was room for that? Did you think like they would still go after a guy like that, or do you think maybe like a Josh Naylor who also got dealt for a reasonable package?
Yeah,
they're not the same as Horwitz, though. I think people are not understanding why Horwitz was worth more in a trade than either of those two players. So touch on that too, if you don't mind.
Well, for me, it was one of those situations where I looked at it and whether it was the dude from Texas. Jeez.
Nathaniel Lau.
Yeah, Nathaniel Lau or Naylor. My argument was if you wanted to go after them before you went after Horwitz, you could have done that. That
Sure.
was my approach to it. So I had put out a tweet saying like, go ahead and say it, Pirate fans, you're right about maybe Naylor. But Horwitz to me was somebody that they obviously thought it was who they ID'd for whatever reason, and that they weren't going to go after that and look at a Naylor or a Lau at that point.
Like in other words, you're basically saying, and I think this too, because the Guardians had both Naylor and Horwitz at the same time, and we traded for Horwitz. So don't you think they kind of like talked about both? I mean, clearly the Guardians had both available, right? So
yeah,
I would imagine that they made their decision already. So I didn't come out and like see this move and feel hard done by it. I also just want to say, if you can't understand why Horwitz would cost more in a trade than Josh Naylor, you really, really don't understand baseball economics.
Yeah, it's
I can't. I'm not even sure I can help you in the time we have left in this episode.
I mean, essentially, Naylor is a glorified rental. Yeah. So do I think you maybe get more impact out of him because he's a 30-plus home run guy for that small period of time that you have him? Sure, I do.
Yeah.
I know Mike Benko here said he sees Horwitz as a 25 homer guy. I don't know if I see that. I don't think he's ever really shown that in the minors, but I don't think it's out of question that he can hit 15.
I think he has a good hit tool.
Yeah.
And room to evolve. I understand the vision. I just think like if this trade or a trade like it, Jim, actually this Horwitz deal, here's what bugs me about it. Not missed opportunities this year, because I think Horwitz will pan out well. This move is exactly the type of move that we wanted the Pirates to make like in 2021. These are the types of things that we were wanting them to do
that they could have
In
already
those
done
off
and
seasons.
had them in the fold and part of the
Yeah.
ball that's rolling down a hill.
Yeah. Now, if you want to argue that they didn't have the pieces for that, okay. I mean, I can't disagree with that entirely. But you could be rolling into, like, you know, potentially the second or third year with somebody who is now just starting to reach the high end of their arbitration. And I just answered why they didn't do it. Because they would be rolling into their high arbitration years right now. And they don't want that because they've got some other guys who are going to be rolling into their high arbitration years. And they want to be able to keep them. Like O'Neal Cruz is not going to be cheap when he reaches arbitration. He's not. And I think that's the kind of thing that maybe we don't think of that they do. It's that future spending stuff that frustrates fans, but it's stuff that we shouldn't have to think about either. You know, it's almost like when you start like a, say, year, like how we're already right now on the Steelers side of things, we're already talking about George Pickens. Like, are they going to pick up his 5th-year option? Are they going to try to extend him? You know, or is he just going to walk because blah, blah, blah. That stuff shouldn't be coming up to the fans. Like, you don't need to hear about that crap, right? Like 2 years before it's going to happen. That's the sort of stuff that baseball shoves in your face every day in a market like this.
Yeah, you're constantly talking about the finances of the game.
Yeah, and it sucks, man. I don't want to do it, but you have to. You have to understand all that stuff, or else you just. It's a lot easier to just think that everybody's incompetent. It really is. You may be right. I'm not telling you like I'm some kind of GM whisperer and I understand Ben Cherington and all of his moves and I see it. I'm just saying it's a lot easier to just say, yeah, he's dumb, than it is to actually try to look at what might be handicapping him. Where might he be handcuffed? What is the goal here? Like, why would we trade for a guy like that right now? I mean, Jim, they want to answer first base and they don't want to have to pay a crap ton for it because they need to spend money elsewhere.
Well, this would be a question I would ask too is, you already know the Pirates are only going to spend a certain amount of money. We can debate on what that is. We know that they should do more. Would fans prefer them to go out and spend $40 million this year, $50 million in the off season, and do it that way, and then maybe have that affect Skeens or O'Neal Cruz or any situation like that? Because it definitely would.
I would have to assume that the answer to that question for many is yes, especially those of you who have proposed Bubba Chandler in trades for guys that literally their contract expires after this year. I mean, you're telling me the only thing that matters, period, is 2025 when you propose something like that. That's why somebody like Josh Naylor wouldn't have excited me anyway. I would have been happy to have him, just like I was happy to have Carlos Santana, just like I'm happy to have Cutch, just like I'm happy to have anybody they sign who contributes to this team. And I think he would have done a great job. I also think that as we start getting into deadline season, if the Pirates aren't firmly entrenched in the playoff race, and I mean like in it, fending people off, I think we'd have a serious conversation about them potentially moving Josh Naylor. Like, and that's not something that I want to do at this stage of this thing. I want guys for a couple years. I want guys that are getting shots. I want youngsters to fill roles. I want them to address things for multiple years when possible, when feasible.
Yeah.
So I'm happy that they got Horowitz. I understand wanting Josh Naylor. Me too. I understand wanting Nathaniel Lau. That's an answer for 2 years. That's good too.
Yeah.
I could have dealt with that, but I still think that next off season, what would we have been talking about, Jim? Who's the first baseman after Lau? Oh my God, Lau makes $16 million in arbitration for 2026. That's what we'd be talking about.
Yeah,
Horwitz, we won't talk about that for 3 years.
well, and the other interesting thing about it is like I also think, Gary, we've got to the point where every move is viewed as the same shittiness, regardless of who the player is in the move. Like Yoshi is treated just like Spencer Horwitz.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
like and you really can't, if you're doing that, it's and just poo-pooing it. There is a difference. It is lazy just to say that that's just the same old stuff. You do have to look a little bit more into it than that. If you're not, there is some good with Spencer Horwitz. There really is. So I just think that, like, if we're applying the same logic across the board, you're probably not going to be satisfied with anything they're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to pick on Sixberg again, but you know, a lot of good comments from people like him or her. I don't even know which one. Sorry, shouldn't assume. A lot of good comments from
Sixberg is a male, but that's just me assuming.
A lot of good comments out there on different takes on why they should spend and how much they should spend, and whether you would care if they just blew a wad of money and lost. It's really not about whether you would care. It's about whether they would care and what they would do if they did. You don't think he's just going to permanently lose his money, do you? Soon comes the fire sale after the flood and fire, my friend. I mean, so that's the type of thing that I just, in this market, man, I've seen them try and extend themselves before and fail. I've seen them rebuild and fail. I've seen them rebuild and try to spend afterwards and fail. I'm probably going to watch this one fail. I know that. That's the way it is. I enjoy watching baseball. I enjoy the players coming in. I think it's fascinating watching teams be built. I just don't think it's as simple as this guy's cheap and this guy's a moron. There's a way to do this. Tampa does it. They won. They haven't won at all, but put a really good product on the field more often than not. Milwaukee's done it reasonably by spending a little bit more than the Pirates, really, a little bit more. And they're making moves that would make Pirates fans blush. The same types of things. Letting Burns go, trading Devin Williams. Willie Adames walks. Willie Adames was a shrewd move. What if they just decided in 2 or 3 years to trade William Contreras? Guess what? They will.
It would be interesting to get like a Brewers and a Rays person on the show and see if fans there, if the moderate winning placates them, or do they still want to bitch about the spending?
I hate it, man. I hate it. It's the worst part of this whole thing, talking about money. And you can't avoid it here. You can't. I can't have a serious conversation where I'm suggesting signing Randall Grichuk and telling you it should be a needle mover. It's not.
No.
Would he help the team? Would he make them better? Yes. Would I advocate them signing him? Yes. Yep. You want Verdugo? Fine. I keep hearing Jesse Winker. I don't care. Fine. That's what I expect them to do. I don't expect them to be the needle movers. I expect Oneil Cruz to be the needle mover, and Brian Reynolds to be the needle mover, and Paul Skeens to be the needle mover, and God help me, Henry Davis to be the needle mover, and Nick Gonzalez to be the needle mover, and Carmen Majinski. I expect the guys that they have developed and worked hard to onboard, that now have a year or so under their belts, to take a frickin' step.
Well, I think it's pretty like what has become clear to me is like the Pirates ID who they want to give these extensions to, and then they are pretty clearly going to expect the rest of it to come from within, other than just a few things here and there. That's really going to be their approach, is it not?
Yeah. And the only reason we see it different right now is because of Paul Skeens. That's where the real pressures come. Paul Skeens coming on board, being generational. made some people think that Bob Nutting was going to do something completely out of his character. He's just not. I mean, like, you know, when he'll push in all the chips as a result of Paul Skeens, when he starts to realize that, like, hey, we're running out of railroad track here and we haven't gotten there yet. Okay, now I'll give you a little bit more money. I think, like, towards the end of Paul Skeens' time in Pittsburgh, if they haven't gotten over the cliff, that's your best bet for him doing anything different. Aside from that, he's going to believe that this worked perfect. We sucked and we got Paul Skeens. That's what we were supposed to do, right? That's what you told me would happen, Ben.
Yeah, because what it does is it makes fans sick, and I get it, rightly so. If you're 4 years down the road and you didn't do anything while Paul Skeens was here, that sounds awful. It really does. But you know, Bob Nutting's like, if you've got frostbite, he's probably only going to cut a toe or two off and hope he can save the foot. You'll lose the foot later because he's too slow to do what he needs to do. I think that that's the best way I look at how Nutting operates. It's always maybe too little, too late at times.
Yeah, we've seen that movie before, and the hope has always been that whoever they hired would do a different act. They'd find a way to circumvent it. They'd find a way to be creative and win despite it. That's what I hope for. I mean, I'd love him to sell. I just don't think he's gonna. And I'm not gonna stop watching baseball in the process. I still love the game. I'm sitting here right now, Jim. I'm to the point where, like, I don't even care who they sign. It's hardly worth even talking about because fans aren't going to care. Nobody they acquire is going to light the needle on fire. Just aren't. There will be people that will be super excited about Luis Robert if they went and got him. I guarantee there'd be more people pissed about what they pay because it's going to cost an arm and a leg, and it's going to put a definitive end cap on this whole thing. You know, I mean, that's exactly what that move would do. And then you better pray he's healthy. Because if not, you've just guaranteed you're going the way of the White Sox. And that's a very short-lived competitive window.
Right. You know, I do think that short of them going out and signing someone to a, you know what, Christian Walker would be a good example. I think that would have made the fan base happy. You know, the 3 years, $20 million. There are a few moves like that I could see, but then you've got to ask yourself, does a Christian Walker want to come here? Does he like it? Would there be any interest there? I don't know.
Let me ask you how many, and I'm asking you this just kind of play a devil's advocate. I think you're right that it would excite fans. Let's just talk about tangibly what it does on the field. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
What is that? 3-4 more wins?
Yeah, I mean
and you've probably subtracted that with Chapman. So I mean, right now you're
good defense.
You're breaking even, right?
I'm sure that's how teams look at those moves. They think it's not worth it, and that's not just the Pirates that view that at first base like.
No, I totally am saying this just to play devil's advocate as to why, if you think you can get 3 or 4 WAR out of Horwitz or Christian Walker, I'm going Horwitz, right? Just if I'm trying to spend money in other places, which reportedly they are, you know. So I mean, somebody other than me and more competent than me finally said 100 million was the target this year too, Jim. So
okay, all right,
it's been reported now.
No, I think that, like, when you're sitting there measuring essentially what you're measuring is the value there, right? Do you get enough impact out of the Christian Walker to make the move?
Yeah, I'm saying, like, we're spending a lot of time being mad about who they didn't get for first base, and it's just impossible to say what Horwitz is going to be until we watch him play. It just is.
He's
I
really.
I
I
like
can't. This sounds like a sad Pirate fan statement. I'm really interested to see him. I really am.
I am too. I think he's got some potential. I don't know 100% know if I buy in that he has to be a platoon or if that's just how he was used. Sometimes I think how you get used kind of turns you into that. You know, if you're only seeing them once every couple of weeks because they're afraid to let you, I don't know how you ever get better. Like O'Neal Cruz certainly wouldn't be better against them if they had pulled the plug. Look what it did to Pedro when they were afraid to let him face lefties. Turned him into useless.
Where's Josh from Bridge to Bucktober when we need him? I need a full accounting of Spencer Horowitz's splits from the minor leagues. So, you know what I mean? But,
Yeah.
You're right. Maybe he has hit them better, and it just wasn't how he was used.
All I'm saying is we don't really know what he's going to be yet. They could have certainly swung and missed here. If he doesn't contribute here for 2-3 years, at least, and well, I think you can hammer him all you want for the trade. It was a bad trade if that's the case. I think the Guardians will use every piece they got back. I really do. I think they'll all have a shot at making the major leagues. So, and especially in that organization.
God help us if Luis Ortiz has a good year. That's all I can say.
I'm sure he will. I thought he was a good pitcher,
me.
man. Yeah, I thought he was a good pitcher.
Yeah.
I don't shy away that they traded value for him. I'm just saying, everybody wants him to make moves. Nobody likes any of the moves because, they're not going to be like traditional baseball moves where we got Juan Soto for this group of players. Well, hey, you know what? Washington's enjoying the players they got back. I'll tell you that. It just took a few years for it to come true, but
I guess the approach that I have had with it is like if the one move that's going to make you happy is that they spend lots of money, then you're just setting yourself up for failure because they're not going to do it that way no matter how much you ask or demand. So I guess I could sit there and complain about that all the time. It's just not what I choose to focus on.
I agree, man. Anyways, good long talk. I had a good time talking about that myriad of subjects because and it all stems from one player signing. It just like my head couldn't stop spinning because social media wouldn't. I was just shocked by what I was seeing. Maybe people were bored and off over the holidays or something, but it was worse than normal.
People got time on their hands. There's not a lot of good stuff happening right now in Pittsburgh sports. So maybe it's just people are just getting warmed up for regular season when it comes to the Pirates. I don't know, Gary.
All right. Well, we'll see if Pitt wins this no-name bowl that they're tied in overtime of. So,
yes,
unbelievable.
As we both keep an eye on it from afar. So,
yeah. I mean, I have a soft spot for Toledo because I won like 13 national championships in a row with them on NCAA 14 once. So,
they're your little squad that could.
Absolutely, man. So, hey, everybody, thanks for stopping in. Next time we will be back. Sheesh. Is Thursday New Year's Day? Because if that's the case, we'll do it the next day.
Wednesday is New Year's.
All right, so we'll probably be back Thursday, right?
Yeah, everybody can show up nice and tired and hungover and hang out with us.
That sounds good to me, brother. All right, so that's when we'll be back with you. And again, sorry about the video last week, everybody, but hey, life goes on, right?
So be it.
Better not say that too loud or I'll get shut down for singing Tupac lyrics, right?
And sadly, I know exactly what song you're talking about.
All right, take it away, Ben.
Let's go, Bucs!
Yeah, buddy.